like to thank you for joining me. My name is Billy Keels with Keep on Cashflow, and I want to share with you why investing in the U.S. real estate market absolutely makes sense. And I'm going to share that with you by sharing my three-letter acronym, which has helped me to create also a 5 figures of revenue in just 18 months. You see, living in Europe and investing back in the U.S. sometimes makes people think, well, why in the world would you do that? And let me tell you, I spent a lot of time, a lot of energy focusing and understanding exactly why investing in the U.S. makes sense. You see, I tried it first in Europe, and although it would have worked well, it's happened so much faster by investing my time, energy, and resources back in the United States. And when I did that, I actually sat down and was looking at a bunch of different information that I want to share with you now. And all of that different information that I was using and focusing on, I can simplify it down into a 3-letter acronym, the PEC, or the PEC method, right? And let me share that with you, because I think it's important as you start to go out and you're looking for ways. I want to share just what my process has been, and hopefully that's going to help you to get and achieve your results much faster. So, first of all, it's when I looked at investing in the U.S., the first thing was about I like to call it population and put it in a bucket. Number one, when you look at the United States population, as of today, there are 350 million people and growing every single day. And it's 350 million people and growing that have and speak a common language, that have a common federal law, that have the same currency, and a lot of the same populational norms, and the fact that it's growing is a fantastic thing. I always like to look at that from a European perspective, and maybe you're watching this and you're in Asia, or you're in Latin America, or somewhere else. You may be in Africa. But just to put it into perspective, when I looked at the U.S. market, and then I compared that to the market in Europe, there's 738 million people and growing in Europe as well. However, when you start to break that down, that's across 30 plus countries, different language, different currency, and things can be much more complicated when I started looking at Europe. And then when you get to common language, common currency, if I use an example like Russia, there's 142 million people and growing. Or where I live in Spain, there's roughly 47 million people and growing. So the population within the same culture, same currency, same language, it becomes much more reduced in terms of looking at opportunities. So the first thing I like to talk about is population. And like to say that is the 350 million people and growing in the U.S. Common currency, common language. It's a language bubble. So things are, this is something great in terms of being able to look at an overall market. One of the other things that was really interesting, because as you're learning more and more about real estate, it's, you want to look at where the major centers are. And so I don't know if you did know this, but I want to share it with you because it's a pretty awesome. One of the reasons that I also wanted to look even more in the States is in the U.S. there are actually 51 what are called MSAs, or think of them as big city centers, metropolitan statistical areas. So 51 cities, let's call them, that are actually MSAs with more than 1 million people. That's that's fantastic when you're looking at where you want to look. You always want to be in places where people are moving or are going. So having 51 different let's call them big cities to choose from is a real big advantage when you're looking at lots of movement. So if I compare that to once again, I'll use the largest city on this side of the pond or the country. Russia actually has 18. Across Europe there are 18 different big cities that have more than 1 million people. And so it goes back to the same thing in terms of, people, places, different language, different culture, but across different cities. So that's the area that I like to call P, the first area. The next is the E, which I like to talk about as the economy. First of all, you need people, and second of all, you need to make sure that those people have, are have an opportunity to work. So I always like to look first of all at, what is happening, how are the motors in the country working. So one of the big things I look at is the gross domestic product, so the GDP. In the U.S., it's an $18 trillion dollar market. If you compare that to Europe, once again, it's an $18.5 trillion dollar GDP. And so when you look at that, once again, 18 trillion in the one country, one language, and 18.5 across 38 different countries, that was a really strong sign for me. So that was something that I also wanted to look at. 18 trillion versus in the US versus 18.5 trillion across Europe. And I'm using Europe as the example because that's where I live. Once again, depending on your continent, I would say do the same kind of thing. But once again, it's why I'm investing in the US. The next thing I want to talk about are the Fortune 500 companies. Did you know that 33% of the Fortune 500 companies call the USA their home? That's pretty, big companies creating lots of jobs. Once again, those lots of jobs for people that need places to live, stay, work. And that's another motor on the economy. So once again, 33% of the Fortune 500 call the U.S. home. And then when you have those big jobs or those number of jobs that are creating, it also helps in terms of the employment, or specifically in this case, the unemployment rate. And in the U.S., as of today, it's below 5%. And that was another thing that was really interesting for me. It's actually 4.7% unemployment in the USA. So once again, these are factors that are really important. So I'm gonna go into the C, right? The PEC. So now we're gonna talk about something else that's really important, is the culture. So in the U.S., there are actually 110 million registered renters. And we talked about before, that's roughly a third of the population. So that is, there is a lot of demand for housing, and with that many renters, it's a great way to look at building a business and providing 110 million renters. And so that, this is once again being able to provide value for a market that needs it. Afterwards, there's another area that is important to take into consideration, that actually 60% of the renting population in the U.S. is renting in multifamily dwellings. So with me as a multifamily entrepreneur, real estate entrepreneur, this is another asset or another data point that was really important for me when I started looking at investing in Europe or investing in the U.S. Right, 60% are living in are living in multifamily properties. Aside from the 60% that are living in the multifamily properties, and this is the thing that is probably the culturally, it helps in the U.S. in that typically the average U.S. worker is going to change roles some 11 different times, and because of the movement and the changing of the roles and changing of the jobs, many times that means changing the city that they're living in. Once again, remember, we have 51 of these major cities, let's call them, that have more than 1 million in population. So when you have such mobility within a culture, it's something that is also great when you're providing housing. So like I said, I wanted to share some of these reasons for why I've selected to invest my time, energy, and capital in the U.S. As a result of this, once again, it's helped me to create 5 figures of revenue, and was able to do that in 18 months. So I hope once again that this has been helpful for you, because doesn't just happen overnight. It is a process, and I wanted to share that process with you. with the hopes that you will be able to get to your dreams and your goals faster than I was able to do. So if you found this video helpful or useful to you, I'd love to talk about your situation, see if there's a way that we can also add value to you by sharing this process or any other things that I've been doing here, because it's helped keep on cash flow to grow very quickly. So like I said, you'll want to click on the link that's here in the video if you're interested in making that contact. I know I'm not interested in being able to speak to you. So I appreciate you taking your time in this video. Hope you found it helpful. My name is Billy Keels once again with Keep on Cash Flow. That's my 2 cents for today. And as always, hasta la próxima.